But the widow in our story, she was drained, but she did something right. She cried out to God. It seems simple and straightforward, but how often do we forget to call out to God first? We just try to survive. We try to just figure it out on our own. For your notes, when you feel drained, cry out to God first. I'm going to read verse 2 again. Elisha said, "What can I do to help you? Tell me, what do you have in the house?" "Nothing at all, except a flask of olive oil," she replied. So Elisha says, "What do you have?" He already knows there's a lot she doesn't have, right? She's got no husband. She's got no money. She's got no food. But still he asks her, "What do you have?" Isn't it our tendency when we're drained to just think about what we don't have? We can just get really focused on that. You may not have everything. Nobody has everything, but you all have something. You may not have money in your wallet. You may not have enough emotional energy to meet all of the needs that are around you, but maybe you do have a family that loves you. Maybe you have one friend that will listen to you. Maybe you've got a roof over your head. If nothing else, you have a God that loves you, that's in your corner, right? You have a church family that's here for you and that supports you. When we focus on what we do have, we automatically start to feel less drained and more full. A little bit of gratitude can go a long way. For your notes, when you feel drained, focus on what you have. On what you have. Verse 3. And Elisha said, "Borrow as many empty jars as you can from your friends and neighbors." He says, go to your friends and neighbors. Ask for help. This poor woman, she's already done a lot, right? And he's asking her to do a little bit more. He says, ask for help. Ask for jars. He didn't just solve her problem on the spot, but he asked her to be involved. Do you think that was easy for her or hard for her? Hard, right? It was probably hard. Some of us, we don't like asking for help. Why is that? We don't want to show our weakness, right? Sometimes it takes a little bit of humility to ask for help, to say, I can't figure this out on my own. I am tired. I need help. A while back, I hit a real low point in my mental health. And I was experiencing uncontrollable anxiety to the point where I couldn't really even take care of my children. I didn't want to ask for help because I was so embarrassed about it. I didn't want to appear weak or like I didn't have it together. I was worried that everybody was going to find out and then they'd be talking smack about me behind my back. That's what I was worried about. But you know what I did? I put my pride aside and I got help. And it was not as bad or as embarrassing as I expected it to be. Did people talk smack about me behind my back? I don't know. Maybe they did. Maybe they didn't. But I don't care, because asking for help was the beginning of my healing. That was when I started to get better. For your notes, when you feel drained, ask for help. What does asking for help look like? I don't know what it looks like for you. It could be just asking somebody for prayer at church. It could be enlisting help with your children or with some project in your home. It could be seeking help from a mental health specialist or from a pastor. It could be having a little time with a friend who always encourages you. Let's read verse 4. Elisha told her, "Then go into your house with your sons and shut the door behind you. Pour olive oil from your flask into the jars, setting each one aside as it is filled." Now, she's only got one flask of oil. So she might have been a little bit confused by his instructions, because he's saying, fill the jars and set them aside as they're filled. Well, how many jars is she really going to fill with one flask of olive oil? I mean, come on. It really doesn't make any sense. And I wonder if she was like a little bit worried about pouring out that last of her oil. I mean, that was the last thing she owned. It was like the last thing that she had. And she didn't really know where Elisha was going with this. She didn't really know what the outcome was going to be. Like, what's going to happen when I pour this out? I wonder if she felt that if she let go of that there wouldn't be anything left for herself or for her sons. But let's see what she does. Verse 5. So she did as she was told. Her sons kept bringing jars to her, and she filled one after another. Soon every container was full to the brim. "Bring me another jar," she said to one of her sons. "There aren't any more," he told her. And then the olive oil stopped flowing. When she told the man of God what had happened, he said to her, "Now sell the olive oil and pay your debts, and you and your sons can live on what is left over." It says she did as she was told, at risk of looking silly to her friends and neighbors in going to ask for help. She still asked for jars. At risk of losing what she had left, she poured everything out. See, she obeyed God, and she saw a miracle. The jars that were once empty were now full. For your notes, when you feel drained, have faith that God will fill you. So our widow, she didn't start with much, just a flask of oil, but she kept pouring. And it's in the pouring out of that little bit that she had that the jars were filled. If she had hung on to that, if she had been too afraid to give it, then she would not have received all of that oil in return. She would not have received that blessing or that miracle. When we feel drained, our tendency is just to hold on to everything that we have for fear that we aren't going to have enough for ourselves. We're not going to have enough energy to get through the day, not going to have enough love to go around, not going to have enough money to pay my bills or to care for my own needs. And we can just hold on so tightly to these things. But the principle of this story is that it's in the pouring out that we are filled. It's not in the hanging on to what we have left. It maybe doesn't make sense to give something that we don't have much of. And it probably didn't make sense to the widow to pour out that oil. But it's when we're empty that God can truly fill us. In your notes, when you feel drained, keep pouring. Keep pouring. In your emptiness, keep pouring into your kids. Keep serving those around you. Keep serving here in church. Keep loving others. Keep sharing. Keep giving. The widow obeyed, and she had faith that God would fill her. There's no doubt she was drained and empty. Her life circumstances left her completely desperate. She was empty, but she was full of faith in God's ability to provide. God is our greatest resource. The widow brought jars. Imagine if she had only brought one jar. If she'd only brought one jar, what would have happened? Only one jar would have been filled. But she brought many jars. We don't know exactly how many, but we know it was a lot. It was enough to cover her debts, and it was enough to live on what was left over. She was full of faith. She brought a lot of jars. She came expectantly. She was drained, but she knew that God could fill her. As many empty jars as she brought, he filled them. And you see, he filled the jars according to the faith that she had. I wonder if after she saw the miracle, if she was like, shoot, I should have got more jars. You know? Like, she could have been a millionaire. The more jars, the bigger the miracle. For your notes, we can limit our blessings when we limit our faith and our obedience to God. I want to share another verse. It's from Luke 6:38, and this is Jesus speaking. It says, "Give, and you will receive. Your gift will return to you in full, pressed down, shaken together to make room for more, running over, and poured into your lap. The amount you give will determine the amount that you get back." You see, the way that God gives back to us is a full measure. And this verse implies that when we give, we actually receive a little bit more than we even gave. Isn't that awesome? That's like such a good return. That's like some high interest. You know, it's like you give a little bit, and then God's going to give that back to you, plus like a little more blessing. You'll receive blessings in abundance, pressed down, shaken together, until you can't hold anymore and running over and poured into your lap. And then it says, the amount that you give will determine the amount that you get back. So you give a little, you receive a little. You give a lot, and you're going to receive a lot. So I want to ask you, when it comes to generosity and in pouring your life into others, whether it's your kids or it's other people, how much are you willing to give? You know, are you willing to give this much? You know, maybe you're willing to give a scoop like this. You're willing to pour this much into others. Well, that's great. You know, if you give that, God's going to give that back to you and a little bit more. And that's really, really good, right? But maybe you're willing to pour a little more. Maybe you're willing to give this much, you know, a little bit more. And then God's going to give that back to you. Pressed down, shaken together, and running over, a full measure. That's amazing, right? But somebody else, they might be willing to pour out even more in loving and serving and giving to others. You know, they might be willing to pour out this much, right? And like, that's what they're going to get back, right? They're going to get a blessing like this, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, right? And maybe some of you are even willing to pour out this much. Can you give this much? This is like the mother load, right? You give this, you pour this out, you pour into others, you pour into your kids. You're going to receive that back, pressed down, shaken together, and running over in blessings. You know, somebody who gives this much, I mean, it's good, But they might look at that person and say, why does that person have so many blessings? Why are they experiencing so much joy and so much fulfillment? Why does it seem like they just keep getting blessed and blessed and blessed and blessed? It's because they're pouring this much. Because they're giving that much. Because they're showing up every day. They're giving their all for God. They're giving their time. They're giving their money. They're giving their energy. And they're pouring. And they're going to receive that much blessing. You know, sometimes people say things like, you know, I don't have any friends, or I can't like meet anybody at church. And I hate hearing that because, you know, I went a whole bunch of years where I really didn't have any friends at all. And I know what that's like. But are you pouring? Are you pouring into others? Or just hoping that people are going to pour into you? You see, you have to pour. You have to invest something to get something back. You know, people will say like, oh, you know, my kids are really struggling, and oh, it's just killing me to, you know, watch what they're going through. You got to keep pouring. Are you praying? Are you pouring? Are you speaking truth into them? You got to keep pouring into them. You know, we all like being poured into, don't we? We want people and we want God to pour into us and to bless us. We love that receiving part, but not necessarily the giving part. You know, and this happens sometimes when people are maybe shopping for a new church, right? They want to know, like, well, what groups do you have? And what do you have for kids? And what's in it for me? But the better question is, how can I contribute to this body of believers? How can I pour? What can I give here? How can I help? And there's a point for every follower of Christ where they begin to realize that it's not what's in it for us, but it's what we can give to others. The word tells us that it's more blessed to give than it is to receive. So you give a little time, you give a little energy, you give a little effort, a little love, you're gonna receive a little bit, gonna get a little bit back. But if you give a lot, you sow a lot, you pour a lot, you're gonna get a lot. You're gonna get a lot back. So here's the good news if you are feeling empty. In your notes, when you are empty, you are in a position to be filled. Maybe you're here today and you're feeling empty and tired. Maybe you're a mom or a dad and you know you feel like you've poured everything that you possibly can into your kids and it's not enough. Maybe you're financially empty, or you're facing a real physical need, or maybe mentally you're just tapped out and you're at the end of yourself and you don't know what to do. Cry out to God. Ask Him to help you. Ask Him to fill you. I want to share one more verse, Ephesians 3:16, and this is a prayer that Paul prays over the church in Ephesus who are facing a lot of difficult trials. And he says, I pray that from His glorious, unlimited resources, He will empower you with inner strength through His Spirit. I like that it says His unlimited resources, because you might feel limited by your circumstances. You might feel limited by the season of life that you're in, or your financial status, or your marital status, or your energy level, or whatever. But God's resources are unlimited. He is more than able to provide for every physical, mental, and spiritual need that you have. It says He will empower you with inner strength through His Spirit. So cry out to Him and don't be afraid to ask for help.